a consistent level of mediocrity at the moment, and I think it's because they're rudderless. I think the players are not empowered. Everything that the chaps have said, I don't need to repeat. I think as far as City are concerned, what it does tell us is that he's rested players in readiness for this game. Sterling's on the score sheet again, which must worry United. I think there'll be a lot of pace in that forward line, and their ability to get amongst the goals on Wednesday night will be instructive and a warning almost for United. And what it will tell us is that United will line up with this 3-5-2 formation, which for me almost is a heresy when you think about the United sides that we've grown up on. Attacking from the wide areas, playing with a 4-2 players up front. It will just be fascinating at Old Trafford to see a Manchester United side set up with all of the good individual players they have, set up to try and contain the opposition.
And with no Varane, I think.
No Varane.
No Varane, who's obviously in the middle of that three, and he's probably the most calming element of that defence. So now it's Maguire and do they do a 4? Did they do the 3? Bailey's?
And in the wider picture as well, for me, it just says to me that United are wedded to this idea that the person who takes charge has to be has to be a guy in the United mold. You have to get the club. And my worry is that they're almost a little bit like Liverpool in the mid-90s when they had the kind of boot room thing. We got to keep maintaining the boot. And eventually they couldn't do it anymore. And it was when Houllier came in, and Houllier managed to change things, and they won the treble in 2001, and they started to move away from that. But United are still knee-deep in that. And the problem is that they are indulging egos instead of fashioning a team and getting tough on players who are not doing their jobs.
From what you've all said, and I know you were saying Manchester United could find themselves on the wrong end of a scoreline like the one against Liverpool when they come up against Manchester City on Saturday. The worry for them is that they've had a brief respite, that hopes have been raised very slightly by the result against Tottenham, by the way that Ronaldo dug them out of trouble against Atalanta. This could be crushing.
Because what will happen is that what we'll see is that City, they'll play out from the back. You know what I mean? They'll try and get people inverted, they'll try and get people around the side, they'll try and get into those little holes just on the 18-yard box where they get the ball, cut it back in. We know that they're going to do that. And Man United, yes, they may be able to stop that for a bit, and when the game starts, because it's a derby, it might be a bit frantic. And when it calms down, that's when the Man United players say, right, City are sitting, now they've got the ball, they're written in there, like, what are we doing? How are we meant to stop them? And then you have to hope that City haven't got somebody like on Mo Salah form. Well, to be honest, no one's on Mo Salah form, but they're going to have to hope that there's no one who's going to finish those chances as clinically as Liverpool did. Now, like I say, you go back to someone like Kevin De Bruyne, who's had no assists yet this season, because he hasn't got that front man who he can connect with, so he knows he could play those balls into. And this is why you can see where the Kane or Ronaldo made sense. Because you can't tell me if Kane or Ronaldo was in that team, one of those was in that team, Kevin De Bruyne wouldn't have assists by now.
Do you mind if I ask a quick question? When you guys, as the quite vocal individuals in your dressing rooms, at what point does somebody or do you say to Solskjaer, this isn't working, we need something better?
That's that you say, that's not the kind of things that, you have a meeting, you call that meeting, and then the manager's in there, and then you do the talk in the meeting rather than somebody directly calling him out, because that's disrespectful. It kills him in front of the rest of the lads. So the meeting's called, and you're hoping that everyone's in there, and it's a Chatham House, man. Everybody can say whatever.
Does somebody say, I don't think this is working? And the manager says, well, can everyone who agrees with him put their hands up? And they all sort of...
What will happen is...
Like that's Ted Lasso, isn't it?
What will happen is that you go in there, and it's one of those situations. I don't know if you've been in it, Ash.
There's been a few, yeah.
You've been in a couple, you know what I mean? And what happens is that, like, whether it's Tony or whether it's George Graham or someone, they say, right, just say what you're saying. And then people just start talking. And that is when people say they need to have that talk. But like for me, I've never been in a dressing room. I've been in dressing rooms where we've gone into those meetings and they've absolutely hammered into the manager, like John Moncur at West Ham and stuff like that, where it turns into like, I couldn't stop laughing. I couldn't stop laughing. It was so disrespectful in there. But, like, in respects of Arsenal, when you had one, it's very good. It's very uplifting afterwards. But we come up, we know what system we're playing. They could go in there and have as many meetings they want. They come back out with all the will in the world and all the verve and all the gusto to, yeah, come on, And you go out there with no system. Man City just pass around you, bam, you're back to square one.
You imagine those Manchester United players, that dressing room, the big names, the star quality that's in there, all sitting around having that meeting. You can imagine there's quite a few forceful voices in there, that there's little factions, I would imagine, they go around gathering support for their point.
Yeah, which is not good. This is why this meeting has to happen, because what you don't want is players getting off like that, because then what happens is you get the cliques, like, you know, you get the clique, and then you got that faction, and then the manager might prefer them over there, and it's not so keen on these guys, or these guys might be, they have to, they're the top guys who play, they don't really care about the manager. And then the manager's got his own guys over there who know that these guys don't care about the manager. They're not together because they don't like them, because they think, you lot ain't playing well enough. We're really good, and this manager's not good enough. I don't know. I'm not trying to say that Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes and Pogba are doing that.
Just for confirmation, we're talking about a dressing room of adults here.
Yes, but when you get into this kind of situation, especially at a club of that size, with the players involved, it can get really intense.
And it's a really good point, because if you continue the perfect storm, then what you do have is journalists on my side of the sporting industry who then say they identify that there are problems. And so they'll hit up the agents or players that they know, and then they'll start to get information on what is the extent of the problem. And people who are neutrals on the outside, they'll interpret it as leaks. It's not so much leaks, it's journalists doing their jobs and saying, look, we can see there's a problem. How bad is it? And